I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, can you feel it coming in the air tonight? Oh Lord, oh Lord. Well, if you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. Well, I was
Hay 32 millones de latinos elegibles para votar en Estados Unidos. Los números son muy fáciles. Si votamos, nosotros los latinos podemos votar contra Trump en números tan grandes que él no tendrá más remedio que dejar la Casa Blanca. Y quizás el país, como él dice. Solo recuerda esto. Los latinos podemos votar a Trump. Una vez más. Los latinos podemos votar a Trump. Una vez más. Los latinos podemos votar a Trump. Los latinos podemos votar a Trump. Los latinos podemos votar a Trump. Pero solo si votamos. ¿Lo harás? Este es el plan. Vota y vota responsablemente. Usa tu máscara o cubrecara. Mantén una distancia de 6 pies o 2 metros. Trae una silla si quieres y espera en línea hasta que votes. Recuerda, los latinos podemos votar a Trump de la Casa Blanca.
The Lincoln Project es responsable por el contenido de este mensaje.
The Forum 2, exclusively on YouTube Live, weekdays from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We tackle the tough issues, political, social, cultural, and racial. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. Check out our website, theforum2.com. Call in live, 414-395-0484. Check us out. Good morning, welcome to the program. Well, we are officially one day away from the opening of the polls for the 2020 presidential election. A few things that I want to talk about today, and then of course we're going to be offering extended election coverage tomorrow, but there's a very specific focus that I'm going to deliver for the election tomorrow. There are a variety of different electoral college scenarios that can lead either Joe Biden or Donald Trump to the presidency. There is one in particular that I find most troubling, and that is the one I'm going to focus on, because if it comes to that scenario, the one I'm going to focus on most of the day tomorrow, is going to cause the most anxiety and the highest tensions amongst the American electorate, and that is the tie of 269 to 269 electoral college votes. And regardless of whatever these national polls have said, I think the last NBC News poll that I saw, which was through Saturday, if not yesterday, had Joe Biden up right around 10 points nationally. He also has a fairly decent lead, just inside the margin of error, but the top end of the margin of error in the battleground states, and that's all well and good. Now, the difference between polling in this cycle and in previous cycles is that in 2016, the firm stopped polling that Saturday before. I think they learned the lesson that you don't stop polling because things can happen that can shift and sway the electorate. Donald Trump on the campaign trail yesterday succumbing to the wishes of the crowd as they were chanting, "Fire Anthony Fauci." He said, well, wait until after the election. Things like that can have an effect. It can move the polls and change voter sentiment at the last minute. The other thing that we witnessed was, and I called it an act of domestic terrorism, those Trump supporters who surrounded a Joe Biden campaign bus, an act of serious intimidation. And it reached such a level of intimidation that the FBI is now investigating that incident. Could you imagine if Antifa or Biden campaign staffers surrounded a Trump bus, how the narrative promoted by the president would be different? And another reason for concern, I did get a message this morning telling people to make sure you have air in your tires and food in your house and your gas tank is full. I don't know if it has reached that level of panic yet. There certainly should be a level of concern. The White House is planning for a level of concern as they are erecting a fence around the White House. Wonder why they're doing that. But I think a lot of it comes down to a possible scenario that Donald Trump holds Florida. He holds Georgia. And we saw some of this in 2016 where Hillary Clinton spent more of her time in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, instead of campaigning in the upper Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And we're blaming it on her not coming to these states. We really don't know what the actual reason was why Hillary Clinton lost. It may or may not have been her campaign. It may or may not have been her. It may have been her allocating resources to try and turn other geography in the country blue, not necessarily for her, but for future Democrats and for the U.S. Senate race. Oh, by the way, the U.S. Senate race is in play too. We want to talk about the number of outstanding ballots, but the scenario in which there's an electoral college tie would be what I'm going to call a conventional map, and that's what I'm going to focus on. That Donald Trump holds both Carolinas, he holds Georgia, Florida, and Texas. Those would be wish list states. Now, all this can change because in the event that Joe Biden, if he wins any of those, Florida, it's over. Pennsylvania, we're not going to know until December. Let me be abundantly clear about that. Joe Biden needs to win the race. If we want to begin to move forward and repair the country and start thinking about solutions and how we can bring things back together, Joe Biden needs to win Florida or both Carolinas, preferably South Carolina, Texas. He wins those on election night. Pennsylvania can do whatever it wants, and Donald Trump can sue and not have all the mail-in ballots counted because this election will essentially be over. But under the assumption that evangelical white women have not deviated from Donald Trump one bit in the South, that is now going to be his firewall, meaning that he can carry Texas, Trump can carry Georgia, Florida, and both Carolinas. Then it comes down to Pennsylvania. And if it comes down to Pennsylvania, and so in that particular scenario, this is assuming that Joe Biden carries Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. It is under that assumption. Polls are looking pretty good. I'm going to do a screen share in a moment so we can get a better idea of where the polling is in the upper Midwest states. Wisconsin is looking okay, but still leave room for some mistakes and some mishaps because those are likely to take place as well. Good morning, everybody who is chiming in via the chat. No, so here's the thing. I don't know if you guys can see. No, you guys can't see the chat windows. So I'm just going to say good morning individually. John Dom, good morning to you. Denise Jones, good morning, Sherwin. It's great to see another day. Let's rock. I can feel it. I got a bunch of feelings, and that's why I played In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins to begin the program, because I just don't really know how this is going to shake out. I'm more concerned with people that want to take their anxiety that they're feeling, because how can you not be anxious about what's going to happen? And then some people are going to want to put that anxiety into practice by going out and patrolling polling places and looking for stuff. If you're going to go to polling places, don't interfere. Don't get out of your car. Unless you have a specific plan to be an observer, or unless you were called or summoned to one of these polling places. We don't need additional chaos, because what we have to keep in mind are the poll workers that have to deal with everything, including the pandemic. So don't add to the chaos. And I have to say this a bunch of times because people are going to do it anyway. Neighborhoods will be able to take care of themselves because polling locations, we have 170 of them, 173, I believe, will be open in the city of Milwaukee, which is adequate considering the amount of people in the city and in the county that have already voted early. That's adequate, meaning that with social distancing, when we talked to the mayor last week, he said he doesn't expect long lines, which is good. So many people have already voted, so hopefully that cuts down on the length of time in which people will have to be at a polling location. But remember, if you're in line at 8 p.m., because some of y'all are not going to leave the house until 7:30 to go and vote, if you're in line by 8 p.m., it is still your right to vote, and don't let anyone tell you any different. If you go to the forum Facebook group, I posted a meme from the ACLU that gives a couple of bullet points of instructions of what your rights are on election day. Also, at some point during the program, and I told her it wasn't, if her schedule didn't allow for it, fine, because I would rather her be doing other things. The chairwoman of the City of Milwaukee Election Commission, Stephanie Finley, might be joining us. If she does join us, I will certainly bring her into the conversation. But if she's doing, election commissioner things, then I don't need her fooling with us. We can have a conversation with Chairwoman Finley another day. But I think for the most part, people have a pretty good idea of what their plan is going to be. I know a lot of you have voted already. Those of you that have not voted and are sticking it out and planning on voting on election day, social distancing will still be enforced. You are required to wear a mask. I don't know why you wouldn't want to wear a mask. Um, but I think for the most part, it should be smooth sailing. I know that the Barrett administration and city government worked really, really hard to put on as seamless and early voting process as possible. I voted last week at Midtown. I was in and out in 8 minutes. It was a well-oiled machine. In fact, I encourage people to do the exact same thing, to go and vote at one of the early voting locations. When final numbers become available, it will show once again that the Midtown early in-person absentee voting location far outpaced every other voting location in the city. In fact, the last time I checked, the votes that were cast at Midtown by the end of last week were almost equal to or greater than all the other early vote in-person absentee locations combined. That's huge. Only because I look at Wisconsin through a very narrow lens. I look at it through the lens of the 23,000 votes that Donald Trump won by. That certainly was depressed turnout in the city of Milwaukee. Donald Trump was able to win the state of Wisconsin with less votes that Mitt Romney lost by in 2012. That was a turnout machine failure for the Democrats. We can blame Hillary Clinton all we want for that, but things weren't communicated to voters in 2016 like they were now. And I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So for the first, I don't know, month, give or take, I just got sick and tired of the text messages because I hadn't yet voted. I only voted last week. And so I'm getting these text messages. Hi, Sherwin. We're telling you, remind you to vote. Do you have a plan to vote? Can you take several people with you to the polls when you go vote? And there was one particular day that I got 5 or 6 text messages from different people, groups, and organizations. And I wasn't focused on my actual going to the early voting location or voting by mail yet. So all of these constant reminders every single day, like clockwork, were becoming annoying. But then once I voted, and I felt that adrenaline, that that momentous event, that occasion that was 4 years in the making. Because in 2016, I couldn't wait until 2020. I have never wanted 4 years to rush past, unlike any other time in my life. Maybe college, I don't know, maybe high school, but I wanted to just live through 4 years. Didn't include the pandemic, just to get to the 2020 election. And then it all kind of hit me at once that I was finally casting that ballot that I had been wanting to cast even prior to the midterm elections of 2018. This was really, really important. Once I cast my vote last week at Midtown, then the text messages that I got, which is weird, it's kind of backwards when you think about it. Now I was welcoming these text messages, even though they were just as annoying as they were prior to me casting the vote, because I had that experience. It was almost like, you guys remember walking across the stage when you graduated from whatever you graduated from? It's a feeling that you only get by doing that particular action, right? You can't describe it to anybody. It is just all of the work and all of the late nights and all of the difficult times, and you thought about giving up, you thought about quitting, but then you finally reached that moment of success. So after I voted, the text messages that I received were no longer annoying because I know that a lot of other people were receiving those messages as well. The Democrats need to use, maybe not as overboard as they went, because some people were getting a little annoyed with the number of messages that they were getting. But this is what Democrats need to do to motivate the base to make sure that Republicans, especially those like Donald Trump, and there will be another one, do not get elected. And so I think the mechanism and the apparatus, not to mention the amount of money that people gave to the Biden campaign, a lot of money. Joe Biden probably raised close to, in the last 4 months of the campaign, it definitely exceeded $1 billion. And you can tell the television commercials alone. Another thing to notice, if you're in the Milwaukee market and you're watching television, so not cable, but broadcast television, where the ads are way more expensive than any other medium. Broadcast television is more expensive than direct mail. It's more expensive than digital ads, and it's way more expensive than those ads that you see play on your YouTube videos, the beginning of your YouTube videos, the middle of your YouTube videos. Broadcast television is very expensive. Donald Trump is probably being outspent 10 to 1 if he hasn't pulled his ads all together. The only anti-Biden or pro-Trump ads that I see on broadcast television in the Milwaukee market are by these dark money third-party groups. Donald Trump didn't even have enough money to promote his campaign on broadcast television because he was hemorrhaging money, and also covered the $1.5 billion that he had of the campaign war chest the president had at one point in time, which was squandered. He had $63 million left going into the last month of the campaign. I don't know how you go from $1.5 billion. And so a couple things Republicans can do, especially if they have incumbency, if they're already in office, they're able to raise and leverage ungodly amounts of money because of their close relationship with corporate America and millionaires and billionaires. See, there's something to that relationship. And while Republicans are always wanting to cut taxes for the wealthy, you cut the wealthy people's taxes and the additional money that they make from their endeavors, they give to Republicans to make sure that their taxes always stay low. And it's this vicious cycle. So Republicans have that relationship, and they build that relationship personally and politically. They love rich people. Because where Republicans can't have a message that resonates with the majority of the American people, where Republicans can't have policies that make sense to the working class and working families and different communities and different cultures and different minorities, they will just raise the money to bombard their voters to make sure that they can get electoral victories, but they also cheat. They have this really weird and almost incestuous relationship with the wealthy. But the only way that Donald Trump could go from $1.5 billion and also being president, you can just raise your hand and can raise $10,000 a second. Regardless of what your political party is, if you are the president of the United States, if you lead the executive branch of the American government, raising money is hardly a task. Donald Trump had people in his orbit, and we've seen it's been one of the most consistent things of his presidency. People that join the administration, they find out how bad it is, then they're a turncoat, they hate them, they expose things. There have been leaks in this presidency unlike anything we've ever seen. I want you to do a quick comparison, a mental comparison in your head. The amount of information that was leaked and the number of people that worked for the administration then left, and you guys have seen the names, and it's too long of a list of names for me to go over. I don't know if there's more people that have gone to prison, that have been indicted, that have been criminally charged because of their connection with Trump, or more people that have come and gone, the staff turnover in the administration. Both of those numbers are in the dozens. But they leaked information because no one was loyal to him. The Obama administration did not have those kinds of leaks. There was not damaging information about Barack Obama that I can recall ever, because if there was some, Fox News and other media would have blown it out of proportion. No one leaked anything from the Obama administration, or at least nothing that was damaging to the president. And I don't want you to think that Barack Obama was perfect. He was not. Considering what we have right now, yes, he was an angel. But presidents always do and say things that could be damaging or embarrassing or even a threat to national security. But Presidents hire people and install people in their administration that they can trust. Donald Trump had to surround himself with his family from the beginning because those are the only people that weren't turncoats because they had nowhere else to go. They had to work in the administration. You think Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner really wanted to work in the White House? Do you really think they wanted to do that? No, they wanted to make money. Can't make money in the White House. I mean, they tried to, but Trump needed to surround himself with the most loyal people that he could find, and it's only a handful of family members because everybody else left him because they hate his guts and they saw that his brand of white nationalism was not good for the country. That's why they have to build a fence around the White House. But the reason why Trump went from $1.5 billion to $63 million, because his campaign consultants, again, not loyal to him, they were ripping him off. They were overcharging him. They were spending money on unnecessary indulgences to drain his campaign. While Joe Biden raised in excess of $1 billion this summer. Good morning, Tutu Reeves, Karen Siegler, good morning. In the words of Les Miserables, yeah, I did play a commercial in Spanish because let me tell you something about our Latino brothers and sisters. We need y'all. I mean, can I just have a moment to talk to our Latino brothers and sisters? As an African American, we all have a lot of common interests, but there are some cultural barriers that may prevent us from working together on the day-to-day. We need to do better as a Black community that knows what it's like to be discriminated against, and what we saw our Latino brothers and sisters, whether you're a citizen, want to be a citizen, or immigrant, or a dreamer, we as Black people have it ingrained in our culture what you dealt with in lightning during this administration. We need you. Now, I also know that there are some Latinos and Hispanics I'm going to include as well, because Hispanics are of European Spanish descent, that may have some Republican or conservative proclivities. There's nothing that I can say that is going to change someone's mind if you're Latino or Hispanic and you want to vote for Donald Trump. But for everybody else, we need you. We need you to help build and solidify our own kind of wall, the kind of wall that keeps Donald Trump away from the White House. So I played it in Spanish this morning, played my ad. I don't know if anybody was able to translate it, but it said basically throw Donald Trump out. It said vote responsibly, observe social distancing, and get rid of him. Gail Williams, good morning to you. Sandy J, good morning. Bobby Pantuso, digging the green screen background. Thank you, Bobby. I actually had somebody design this for me. In fact, all my logos get designed by the same person, and they do a fantastic job. Diana Beckham, good morning to you. G Collins, good morning. Haywood Beeman says good morning to everyone. Betty Thompson, glad you're here. Patrice Goldberg says good morning, Sherman. Thank you, Patrice. Thought my name was on display somewhere, but whatever. Tammy Reed, glad you're here, Tammy. Good morning to you. Curtis Cook, good morning, everyone. 1 day left. Douglas Dickerson says good morning. Dorinthia Robinson says it's unfortunate that many of Biden's votes will be caught up in the delayed count. That's a tough one. So yes, you're right, Dorinthia. What there needs to be is a federalizing set of standards that all states have to adhere to. From this point forward, there are some people that are going to vote by mail forever. Pandemic or not, they are going to enjoy the convenience of getting their ballot sent to them and the fact that they can drop it in the mail. It may not be everybody. We may never see numbers as high as this, but some people have gotten so used to it. A lot of life has become very commonplace. This is what life is like right now. And you know how we fall into habits and routines. So how some people vote, some people are really loving this new process of voting for the comfort, convenience, and privacy of their own home. But what we don't have as far as uniformity goes, because if you're voting in Florida, okay, you're voting in Georgia, if you're voting in Texas, Texas is going to shock the world. Now, I don't know if their results are going to fall in the Biden column, but more people have already voted in Texas. Already. This was like as of Friday. More people have cast ballots in Texas than voted in the 2016 election, and we still have election day. Now, I've been paying attention to information that says these early votes, the mail in votes, the in person absentee votes have been breaking for Biden at about a rate of 60%. That's all very, very good news. But if Texas is voting and the Carolinas are voting, I'm in Wisconsin. I can have a conversation with Wisconsin people and get a feel for, what the sentiment is here. And I can follow the polls in Wisconsin since April of 2019, even before Joe Biden was officially in the race and he was leading here. I have an understanding of Wisconsin. We've had conversations with people that administer our elections at the county level, at the city level. We have a pretty good feel for Milwaukee. But Milwaukee and Wisconsin needs to know when Texas's votes are counted. We need to know when Florida's votes are counted. And because there is no uniform standard for the states to have, how long can you hold on to ballots? Can you start processing them when you receive them? Do you start opening the ballots, start processing them when the polls open on election day? Do you wait until the polls close? All of these different states that we need to know their election totals all have different time frames. That is the issue. Florida has already started processing their ballots. So we will know, I think they gave time. What was I watching? I watched so much stuff. Oh, was it NBC? The Today Show. Florida has already started processing their ballots because they were able to process them as they received them. Florida may report their results early Wednesday morning. Now remember, that's one of those states that tips the scales. Trump can't win without Florida. He can't, the mathematical possibility is nearly impossible, meaning that Donald Trump would have to win like every other battleground state. Trump would have to win Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and probably like Virginia if he loses Florida. So if we know Florida's result, that then additional votes that come in will just add to Joe Biden's electoral college victory. So I'm hopeful with that, but I'm not optimistic. In fact, we've got a member of our forum Facebook group that is a resident from Florida who's going to keep us posted on tomorrow's broadcast. I haven't quite figured out how tomorrow is going to go. I'm going to do a regular 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Maybe I stretch that out depending upon what is happening in the city of Milwaukee after the polls have been open for a couple of hours. But I will come back later on in the afternoon or early evening to update everyone on what is happening, because by then we'll have a real good idea of what is going on nationally. Dorian Higgins, good morning, sir. He says, good morning. I'm optimistically anxious. Patrice Goldberg says, what's going on with Texas ballots? Not real. I think I have a story here about Texas. Have they reported any irregularities? If you guys have heard any, or because things are probably changing while I'm talking to you guys right now. So if there's things that come up, if you go to YouTube and you comment in YouTube, I can see the comments. If you're commenting on, I can see your Facebook comments as well, because I know this video is also playing across my Facebook channel. So if you comment anywhere on Facebook, whether it be in the forum Facebook group or on my personal page, or even on Twitter, my Twitter is Sherwin again, at Sherwin again. I should be able to read your comments because I'm using this new program. Not that y'all care. I mean, I'm proud of myself because I learned how to do all this stuff in a short amount of time, where I can broadcast this. It's also a test for tomorrow, where I'm able to broadcast this stream to YouTube and to Facebook and to Twitter. And then all of the comments that people leave on any of those different platforms, I'm able to read in one box. Like if you guys could see my screen right now, it literally makes no sense. I got tabs open all over the place. I got all sorts of stuff. Bobby Pantuso, September 30th, baby. That's when you voted? Oh, you voted early. Bobby, I hope you didn't vote so early that you forgot that you voted September 30th and you voted again because you didn't remember that you voted. Terry Reed Cook, good morning, Sherwin and crew. Sherwin, thank you so much for everything. No, thank you guys. You guys are the whole reason for this. And some of the guests that we have interviewed since I've been doing this, it's very little is about me. In fact, most of the people that I've talked to probably didn't want to talk to me, but they wanted to talk to you guys. So another interesting thing about what we all do here collectively is we were in the middle of I guess we still are, a search for a new police chief as law enforcement, among other things, are on the ballot this year. And there was a guy named John Pate who is currently in Florida. He's got some roots in the Chicago area, extensive law enforcement background, and he was one of the 6 finalists to be Milwaukee police chief. And John Pate, using his skills and his expertise of public relations and media, he found us. He found the forum. Now, remember, this guy's in Florida. Doesn't really know much about how we communicate amongst one another in the city of Milwaukee, but he found our group on Facebook, reached out to me, and then I was able to interview him. So I want you guys to know, those of you that participate and comment and share stories and valuable information to boost the knowledge base of our democracy. There are people who don't know anything about Milwaukee or Milwaukee politics that come here and talk to you all because you guys are just this treasure trove of political acumen. And for that, I cannot thank you enough. Lemon Harris says, no more years, no more years. Well, we're not gonna count our chickens just yet. There's a variety of ways in which this election can go. And I kind of gone through my own like emotional turmoil with this, because at some point I have to be realistic. And I noticed that, when I put up a scenario that Donald Trump is not going to win Pennsylvania, because that's very likely. There's a bunch of ways in which Joe Biden can win. There are ways in which Donald Trump can win. Trump's pathways to victory are very narrow, and quite honestly, they're getting more narrow by the day. But when I made my prediction based upon information that I saw and that I received, and I compared it to other polling data, Pennsylvania looks like a long shot for Joe Biden. That's why Joe Biden is spending all of today in Pennsylvania. He's not, to the best of my knowledge, and I have a listing of the campaign stops for both candidates, Joe Biden is staying in Pennsylvania. That means that the map that I am most concerned about, the Biden campaign is concerned about that map as well. If it comes down to Pennsylvania, meaning if Donald Trump wins his traditional red state because of evangelical white women in the South, and I have to give some weight to that, because we just assume certain parts of the South and the Bible Belt they're just Republican states. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, don't even bother campaigning there. Don't spend any money. They're not getting text messages in those states, in Missouri, in Arkansas, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, because those are red states. If Donald Trump is able to carry those because of the evangelical white women, really the only base that hasn't left him, because even non-college educated white men that broke for Trump in 2016 have peeled away and have gone third party, or they're breaking for Biden, which is good. The whole point of having Joe Biden as the nominee to get those working class white folks who don't have a college education to come back to the Democratic side, because they have Democratic proclivities. They voted for Obama. And we knew that there was no other candidate that was running for the Democratic nomination that could have captured those voters' attention and spoke the speak of those voters like Joe Biden. Black voters in the South, which gave Joe Biden the boost he needed to get the nomination. Please don't forget that. Even in red states, in states like Mississippi, 60% of the Democratic primary voters are Black. James Clyburn from South Carolina said, "We know Joe and Joe knows us." Now, that was just what he was communicating to the rest of the country, because James Clyburn knew, Joe Biden knew, Kamala Harris knew that by James Clyburn saying that, and then Black voters were able to unleash their power to give the support to Joe Biden, there was a much larger chess move or political philosophy behind that a lot of folks didn't understand. Because the reason why African Americans vote for Democrats is more of a mystery than it is obvious. People want to simplify it. Oh, the Democrats give the Blacks a whole bunch of stuff. No, they don't. No, they don't. Whatever Black people get is mostly because of how we elect at the local and at the state level. Whatever it is that we get, and we don't really get much, lives are still miserable. That is more a product of our activism in our own communities and our own neighborhoods. But Joe Biden could represent bringing back the opportunity for Democratic governors and Democratic mayors to have a say so in what kind of federal resources our states get, what Milwaukee gets. With Milwaukee being a blue city and Donald Trump being president, we are iced out of resources. We are iced out of even returning of our federal dollars so that we can make collective decisions about black and brown Milwaukee so we can further our own cause. Joe Biden was the best opportunity for that, meaning that we had to select someone that may have been against the best interests of black people, because I know you know about the 1994 crime bill. So in the last 24, 72 hours, I cannot tell you how many people I had to unfriend because they're still, I'm not voting for Joe Biden because of the 1994 crime bill. Black people wanted the 1994 crime bill. Why do people think that Joe Biden as a man, as a US senator, he had more power apparently to implement the 1994 crime? Like Joe Biden single-handedly had the keys to all the jails and just ushered black people into prisons. We have a lot to learn in this country when it comes to civics lessons. And whatever this country looks like after November 3rd, whoever is on that stage getting inaugurated on January 20th, 2021, we have to go back to the basics when it comes to education. That is where my focus is going to be, because some of y'all just you don't have a clue. You don't know how it works. You have no clue how it works. You don't know the history. You don't know what led us to this point. You don't know that people looking for simple solutions to ever more complex problems in a growing, diverse nation. When you look for simple solutions as the world gets more complicated, you fall into fascism. That's exactly what it is. And the Democrats can fall victim of it too. And so this whole 1994 crime bill means that somebody's got some explaining to do, and we can revolutionize how we teach people, whether it be children in grade school, elementary school, and high school, college, or even adults, because we have taken what we knew about education and thrown it out the window and have given education essentially to parents and people at home with an internet connection. So if we have done that to education right now, then we have the opportunity to rebuild it and to reform it, because this has told me more than any other thing I've ever seen and experienced in my life. People have no idea how the process works, yet we give them the power to make decisions for all of us. I'm gonna be sitting here eating a bowl of cereal, wondering what the hell Texas and Georgia and Atlanta are gonna do. And I'm sure there's some very great people in those states, but the fate of us in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee, one of the most segregated cities in the entire country, the fate of how we move forward rests on other states in which I know people do not have the same information, the same truth, and the same facts. Denise Jones, I applaud those phone workers. I have been very kind to them, even though how annoying they were, and I thank them. Yeah, toward the end, because I know some of the text messages that you get, especially when people have their name. Hi, Sherwin, this is Ronnie. They probably get a lot of mean replies from people, and I didn't do that. They have your phone number, right? You don't want to be mean to somebody that has your phone number, just like you don't want to be mean to the person that is serving your food at a restaurant. But they were doing a very important job, and those of us that were already convinced and have already voted and had our minds made up a long time ago, it was an annoyance. But think about all of the other people that they have to bother. You got to tell somebody something 74,000 times before they even can barely remember it, barely. And so I do applaud the work that they were doing as well, because those are really the caretakers of our democracy, trying to urge people to vote. Because if I boil this down to its most elemental, to where I think the most people can understand what's really happening here, and people will talk about politics only from their level of understanding, right? If they've got a lot of experience, with Democrats or Republicans or legislation or policy, they're speaking from a much different place. Not better, not worse, but just a different place because they know it intrinsically. When you are speaking from your level of understanding, your shortcomings in how the process works can become blaringly apparent. And because I have worked in the industry, on the campaign side, I've worked for policymakers, I've worked for legislators and executives. I've also talked about it extensively on broadcast talk radio at 2 different radio stations. Hell, it might have been more than that. I might be more than 2. I have a different interaction with policy and with politics than most other folks. And so I'm not bothered nor disturbed by the amount of outreach that is being done, even if I'm continued to be on that list of folks they're outreaching to. They sit these folks down with a list of names and a list of numbers. I've even gotten a list of names and a list of numbers because I agreed a long time ago when I wasn't quite sure what the strategy was going to be. And I can show you a part of the strategy right here. I've got, so this is in a week. I'm serious. Maybe 10 days. Because before this, I just threw all this stuff away. 1, 2, 3, 4, including, I showed you guys this one. This is a recruitment for a black militia. Oh, I just lost count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 pieces of direct mail in the last probably 10 days. Now I know what the strategy is. It is bombarding as many people as you possibly can to try and get them to do one simple action, which they can do by mail, which they could have done in person, which they could have done and can do tomorrow. I get the strategy now. And so if I'm a part of that, me being annoyed so that the federal government, the executive branch of the federal government is not inhabited by a white supremacist, then that's what we got to do. Then if you don't like the outreach plan, then get more involved in the next Democratic campaign so the outreach is different and more specific. Without everybody's involvement, this is what we got. They bombarded all of us with information, mostly the same information. But I think when Joe Biden said this is about the soul of the nation, that resonated with me. I felt that. You guys have heard a lot about racism, haven't you? A bunch of white people found out that they were racist, never knew they were racist before. Thought all the things they were doing and saying and their black friends that they had, that they were totally cool, that nobody would ever call them a racist. You come to find out that the whiteness that you believed in, whether you admit it or not, has been a trick. We lied to you. We Santa Clausified whiteness to believe that it was better, it was more superior, it was more supreme, and everybody else is different, a foreigner, an alien, or exotic. White is just normal. It's the default setting. We come to find out that that default setting was created by this magical, mythical, made up history in which people can just romanticize about the founding fathers and they came here and they created a nation and everybody is equal. And then you can have freedom of religion because they were freeing oppression and they came here and oppressed everybody else. When you have this fairy tale make-believe history about yourself, because if you're a white person in this country, your story, quite honestly, is beautiful. It couldn't be written any better. But when you have this romantic fantasy about the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution in which people cling to, they cling to the rights in this Constitution. They live for it. It is what creates America, and they love America. And these sons of bitches that are kneeling, how dare you respect the flag and something with the veterans. When you have this mythical, mystical fallacy told to you about your history, not the rape, not the murder, not the diseases that were brought here that are still here to this day that came from when European settlers colonized this world. There's no talk about that. It's only the pretty parts. It's only the beautiful parts of it. When you are indoctrinated, I'm going to say radicalized into that history, that you're on the side of the good and America has fought wars and America, we're the heroes and everybody looks up to us. When you have a history that was delivered to you like that, you can't understand how anyone else can be oppressed by it. And that's where we are. So when Joe Biden said this is for the soul of this nation, it means that racism is going to exist and we have to work diligently and work very, very hard. And I think that more people have come together during this 4 years in America than maybe any other 4-year span, based upon the actions of a president and the pandemic and a downtrodden economy and police violence that we saw play out. We were all at home watching our computers and glued to our phones. We saw George Floyd getting murdered. And I will tell you this till the day I die. The murder of George Floyd was the worst thing I have ever seen in my life. Ever. There is no comparison to it. I've seen friends die, family members die, gone I don't know how many funerals. I've dealt with sadness myself. I've dealt with being unemployed, you name it. I've dealt with being ridiculed and called all sorts of names. I've dealt with my address and personal information being put on the internet because I thought that Kyle Rittenhouse was a murderer. I've dealt with all of that. The worst thing I've ever seen in my life was the murder of George Floyd. Fighting for the soul of the nation simply means this. Racism exists in this country, and I think more people are aware of it. They don't know how to fix it, but they're aware. And the kind of white racism, white nationalism that Donald Trump has promoted and given great comfort and given great confidence doesn't belong in the executive branch of America. That's it. It's as simple as I can get it. The kind of racism that Donald Trump has promoted and worn like a shield that has defined him, his legacy, his campaign, his policies, doesn't belong in the White House. It might be in the backwoods of the Louisiana Bayou. It might be in the Delta of Mississippi. It may exist in those places, but it has no place for the good, hardworking, decent people, including the people in the military, because when you serve for the commander-in-chief, you are serving his agenda. It's not fair to them. That is the biggest disrespect to the flag, to make our service members have to defend an America that does not want collaboration from those people who come from other countries. The military is made up of people from other countries. Buenos dias, Sahara Ali. Glad you're with us. G. Collins, the voting process at Midtown was very smooth. The poll workers were excellent. They were. And every time there was a new voter, a new person registered, everybody stopped what they were doing and somebody yelled out new voter and everybody started clapping. It was one of the most beautiful things I had experienced in a year that has been full of treachery. And I'm not going to get into, these deep philosophical, political discussions. I'll save that for tomorrow. This is about the kind of white nationalism that is dangerous to me and people that look like me and people that have brown skin or speak another language or come to America for the promise and hope that it can deliver, that I thought that America was on the right path with 8 years of Barack Obama, but it turns out that was just as false as anything else. What Donald Trump is promoting doesn't belong in the White House. There are places for it. And if you want to be a racist and fly a Confederate flag, and if that's what you want to do, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I mean, I don't want you to do it, but there's more of us than there are of you. And soon there will be none of you. So if you're going to fly a little Confederate flag until you can't fly it anymore, okay, because there will be a day in which that flag is outlawed in the United States. I assure you that legislation is coming. But it doesn't belong in the White House. Because what we did is we gave life. We gave an organ transplant to an era of America that is on its way out. Demographically, it's on its way out. Life expectancy of white people, shorter and shorter and shorter. They're having less children. White populations are not growing. They are shrinking at a rapid pace. If Texas goes blue, it is because the number of black and brown people that have moved to Texas, Milwaukee black people, let me talk to you for just a moment. How many of y'all know people that have moved to Texas that are from here, that will never come back to Milwaukee? There's a new era in this nation, and I shouldn't say it's new because it's been a long time coming. And what Donald Trump did is he gave the dying era one more chance to rear its ugly head, and now it's fully exposed. It's fully exposed, and also some of our white friends and our white allies, they realized that they had a little bit of racism in them too. We all do. We are encouraged to diminish those that don't speak the language, that don't participate in our culture. And I've also seen it in our politics because there's a whole crop of young people that just are fed up. They don't understand why the world can't even be commonsensical, because we have just accepted a political process that is slow and resistant to change. And when you have a process and you accept it, and some of that is our fault, when you accept a political process that's slow and resistant to change, things actually get worse. But also, I'm coming from the perspective of someone who wasn't born with the instant gratification that the internet can bring. The knowledge base in human history doubles with every 6 months, give or take. We know twice as much as we did every 6 months. That's significant. And so if you have all of this knowledge and get more and more and more of it, and everybody, just about everybody has access to it one form or another, whether it's in your pocket, it's your computer, or at your library, you can get access to the internet some kind of way. Unless you're in rural America, we're still having a problem getting them internet access, and I think it shows by their voting patterns. People are not going to wait, because if I want something, I could probably order something off of Amazon and have it come to my house while I'm talking to you guys. So why can't social change operate that exact same way? Now I know as an old, middle-aged, mature adult that that's not how the world works. But for young people that have grown up in a world, if you want information, you can get it immediately. If you want to buy something, you can get it just about immediately. The moment you think of something, you can move into action at the speed of light. And they're looking around at the environment, they're looking at the climate, they're looking at the fact their wages are too low and their student debt is too high, because our generation and those older than us told these young people, go to college, get an education, and something magical was going to happen. You know what happened? You're working at the same job you're working at when you were in high school, making the same wage. And so it's too difficult for me to try and explain to young people that, no, you have to wait your turn. Well, your turn is now. And I have had my fair share of disagreements with our more progressive brothers and sisters. I'm going to tell them right now, I'm an ally. You're going to be able to take this fight to another level that I have never been able to envision. Some of the things that I was dreaming about and thinking about when I was growing up, it's like, wow, it would be nice if we could have legal marijuana in the world. It's legal in half the country. Things can happen very, very quickly if we can give enough confidence and faith to those that are sick of the messes that we have created. Bobby Pantuso says, even Aaron Perry has a TV commercial. Yo, I saw that. I've been doing this work for some time, and I cannot remember the last time an assembly candidate had commercials on broadcast television. You know, assembly districts are only like 50,000 people, between like 54 and 60,000 people. And so those are the only people that can vote in that race. But if you're watching broadcast television in the Milwaukee market, like 1.1, 1.2 million people are seeing those commercials, but only 50,000 people can vote for these state assembly races. Another one is my good friend Emily Segrist. She's got television commercials. And in fact, her opponent, Dan Knodel, he's running scared right now. Alberta Darling has television commercials, and so does her opponent, Neil Plotkin, I believe his name is, out there in the Brown Deer River Hills area. When you see Republicans that are in gerrymandered districts that were drawn so they could always get reelected, even by doing nothing. When I say doing nothing, Alberta Darling wouldn't have to raise $2 million to defend her state Senate seat. It was drawn to encapsulate the most conservative voters that have flown away from Milwaukee and have moved out to the suburbs and the exurbs. They drew that district for her on purpose. Now she has to spend millions of dollars to defend a district that was drawn for her because traditional Republican conservative voters are sick of Republicans' mess. Denise Jones says, I spent money this year, was ridiculous. People are trying to eat and pay their rent/mortgages. It is sad. The only way to win is to spend stupid money. Sad but true. Good morning, Justin. There weren't leaks in other administrations because they weren't working for an administration that was morally bereft. Oh, I agree. And I'm going to tell you what. I didn't work for the Barack Obama administration. In fact, when I met Barack Obama, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't really understand what the appeal was. And let me qualify it by saying this. When I met Barack Obama, our former U.S. Senator, Russ Feingold, who I think would have made an excellent U.S. president. Russ Feingold was running for re-election in 2004. That was the Kerry Edwards Democratic ticket that year. They won the nomination. And Russ Feingold did a campaign event, which Russ didn't even need to do back then. Russ was just going to landslide his his election. I don't even remember who ran against Russ Feingold in 2004 because it didn't matter. And we had an event because I was working for the Democratic Party, the campaign for Kerry Edwards in 2004, and we did an event at the Washington Park Band Shell, 2004. And the featured speaker for Russ Feingold, right, to get people fired up and ready to go and to vote for Russ Feingold, was Barack Obama. Barack Obama hadn't even been elected to the Senate yet. And I'm thinking to myself, Russ Feingold, who had been in office since 1992 and was running for re-election in 2004, Russ was ultimately defeated by Ron Johnson. We got to have a conversation about that someday. But I'm thinking, why would someone who was elected to the U.S. Senate when Barack Obama was probably in undergrad, like, why would you want this dude who's running for the same office you are in Illinois to come and speak on behalf of your campaign? Because Russ Feingold knew before Barack Obama was even elected to the Senate. That's how politically clairvoyant Russ was. But he wasn't politically clairvoyant enough to see that the Tea Party was going to essentially defeat him in 2010. But I think about that all the time because that was the first time. So Barack Obama spoke at the DNC convention in 2004. Gave a great speech. Like, oh, that's cool. But Black people, we had a different philosophy on Barack Obama. We were like, he's a good one. Good luck to him doing whatever he does, working somewhere in middle management. I don't know what we thought about Barack Obama. But it wasn't us, the Black community, that said, oh, he's going to be the next president. But there were other people that saw him and they knew something that we didn't. Russ Feingold included. So he gave the speech Barack Obama did in 2004. Russ Feingold brings him here for a campaign event at the Washington Park Band Shell. Some of you may have been there. And I just didn't even, like, all these other people were like lining up to meet him. Like, why do I want to meet another candidate that hasn't even won his election to the U.S. Senate? Because Barack Obama had run for Congress and lost. So he was coming to Wisconsin. Yeah, he gave a great speech, but I've heard great speeches before. I'm like, he's not even elected to the Senate. But there were people that knew Russ Feingold was an early believer in Barack Obama. And I always think back to that. And I'm a little bit embarrassed because some of the people that took pictures with Barack Obama in 2004 at the Washington Park Band Shell, with the band shell as the backdrop, have those pictures framed because they can say they met Barack Obama way back when. Sahara Ali says we need each other. We do. Our Black and brown communities, like, it's our version of democracy is different. And as angry as we may seem, and as angry as we have earned the right to be as Black and brown folks in this country, we don't want anybody else to feel like that. Now, because some of the white folks don't care who they hurt. Because remember, they were given this fairy tale of a perfect American history. And when you're given a fairy tale of your history and how great you are and your forefathers are and that created this nation apparently out of nothing, like there wasn't already a million people here on the continental United States, but that's another story. But when you have this beautiful romantic history of how we were valiant and we had bravery and we won these wars and we created a beautiful, prosperous America, we did it by stealing and raping and robbing and pillaging and colonizing or whatever. But when you tell people this is what your history is and you teach it in schools, meaning that you can't graduate from a discipline of public instruction in high school unless you know white European romanticized fantasy history. It's impossible. When you believe that is your history and that's where you came from, these noble people, these founding fathers that created the greatest nation that has ever lived. You sing the national anthem and the Star Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance every Monday. We all were indoctrinated. We all were radicalized into that fairy tale of America. When you do that, you cannot believe nor understand nor mentally interpret the fact that people are marginalized by your fairy tale history. And there's even Black folks that have been romanticized by it. The number of African Americans that are running as Republicans and choosing to run as Republicans in Democratic legislative seats right now is staggering. Now, I've explained why they're doing it. We'll have that conversation another time. Eileen Seeger, good morning to you, Eileen. I am so glad this safe space exists. I cannot wait to vote tomorrow. Eileen, can you keep us posted? Because You're a brave soul going out there and voting on election day. Udell Harris says, good morning. Denise Jones, my parent, age 90s, for the first time voted by mail. They said they loved it. I checked to make sure it was received. Good. Star says, good morning. Texas ballots will count, says Alicia Johnson. Good. Bobby Pantuso says proclivity. That's a good word. I use a lot of words, and so I try not to use the same word a whole bunch of times. So I got to use new words. Karen Siegler says Stacey Abrams would say those are voter suppression states. I would agree. If Stacey Abrams had an election stolen from her, if you want to take what we witnessed with the murder of George Floyd and then take that, because you watched a man lose his life in slow motion. Stacey Abrams, who ran against the Secretary of State, Brian Kemp. He's running again. He was her Republican opponent for governor. As Secretary of State, elections were his purview because in some states, the Secretary of State administers elections. In Wisconsin, we have a separate elections bureaucracy that does that. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but who knows? But Brian Kemp didn't even divorce himself from overseeing the election in which he was on the ballot. And that election was literally stolen from her. And when I say the slow, painful death of George Floyd, it was a slow, painful death of a democracy that very much favored Stacey Abrams to be the first African American and first African American woman to lead the state of Georgia. It was this snuffing out of votes. And if you just take that one example, and there's so many, why do we live in a country, Democrat, Republican, moderate, liberal, progressive, independent? Why do we live somewhere where that is tolerable? We don't agree with what people do. I yell at y'all all the time for the stuff you do. I wish you wouldn't do stuff. You do so many things that I don't like. Get into arguments in the forum, Facebook group. I got to delete every damn body. I'm trying to get to 5,000 friends on Facebook, but I can't get there because I got to delete somebody for saying stupid stuff every day. Just trying to get to 5,000 friends for the hell of it. Can't do it. Got to delete somebody Because we disagree with someone does not mean that they need to be extinguished or diminished, unless you have malicious intent. Because when we rebuild America, we're going to be kinder. We're going to be more gentle. We're going to be more understanding. We're going to have a heavy focus on education because some of y'all have different facts. That's not going to work anymore. It's not going to work anymore. It's not going to work anymore. Until social media outlaws intentionally false and negligent information. And they have to do it. The whole thing with Facebook, and we all use it. I talk about it 48 times a day. But lies spread faster than truth. Social media was not designed to be the second coming of human intellectual evolution. It was designed to get clicks. And so whatever you have to do to get more clicks and to get more likes and to get more shares, that is the information that will be most prominent, even if it's lies. And I just want people to understand that. So what we have done, and with the help of my fantastic moderator, Justin, is we have provided a place where if it's even like moderately questionable information, you're not going to see it. Not going to have people arguing over QAnon. They're terrorists. They need to go on trial. Paula Weckman says, what do you make of these Trump caravans in Texas, now California, following Biden buses? So how I really feel about that, I don't want to say publicly, but I know that if the tables were turned, because it is weird that Antifa, like those that are against fascism and Black Lives Matter, like they're the liberal extremists. But if you take guns to polling places, won't wear a mask during a pandemic, try to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and then have a plot to kidnap the governor of Virginia, and will surround a tour bus or a bus of campaign workers, like those aren't extremists. But how I really feel about that, because if it was Antifa that surrounded a Trump bus, which I would probably get a kick out of it, even though they shouldn't do that. because again, we can disagree with people without wanting to run them off the road or worse. If a bunch of Democrats, Antifa people wearing Antifa clothes, I guess Antifa wears black. I don't know what they wear. If they surrounded a Trump bus, they had a caravan of people. I mean, just look at when people protest for social justice and they block off the freeway. People have a fit, don't they? Trump supporters would have opened fire, and they would have been justified in doing so. They felt intimidated. They felt threatened. They were on the highway, minding their own business, going to their next campaign event. Joe Biden actually canceled several campaign events in Texas, meaning that the terrorism that was enacted against other American citizens, and I don't care if the people on that bus weren't American citizens, if you are in this country, you are under the care of our laws here. So I don't care who was on the bus. You're in our custody. If you're in America, that regardless of what your status is, you're counted in the census too. But Trump supporters would have shot those people. And Trump probably would have defended them. That's the part that just drives me absolutely crazy. You can threaten people and have campaign events canceled. And that was what they were aiming to do. They didn't want the inevitable to come true because remember, Donald Trump gave these folks life support. It's almost like that kind of racism and white supremacy is akin to drinking and smoking your entire life, and people have told you and doctors have told you, you got to stop smoking, you got to stop drinking. You keep smoking, you keep drinking because I'm going to live my life because freedom, ain't no doctor going to tell me what to do. And I'm smoking and I'm drinking. And then all of a sudden your liver starts failing. And the doctors have been telling you for 20 years, stop drinking, stop smoking. You got lung cancer. You're going to get sick. You're going to die. We're telling you. And then they get sick. And then somebody comes along and gives that miserable person who had been warned about their behavior and not taking responsibility for their own health, we're going to give you a liver transplant. That's what Donald Trump has done. It has taken an era of American history that was poisoning itself and gave it new life. And we're going to have to undo a lot of that. But don't worry, we will. So what I think of the Trump caravans in Texas and California, there was even a caravan in Madison. Talk about the stupidest place to try and do voter suppression in Madison. Of all places, that's not really where you want to do it because conservatives are not going to win Dane County. Even though there's some very conservative pockets in Madison, to have a caravan there in front of early voting locations in Madison was just, that's really desperate. But also, what I don't want to happen, because there's a high level of restraint, and you guys can see, unless it comes to, people out there who've been protesting the police all summer and all throughout the fall, there's a high level of tolerance that the left has, like on a day-to-day basis, right? The left is way more tolerant of the egregious behavior of the right and of the Trump supporters. It's very tolerant of it. And I think that the right tries to get away with taking advantage of the gentle nature of those who believe in a much more inclusive politics, because you're kind of a softie, right? If you believe that people should be treated fairly, you can love who you want to love and make a decent wage, and everybody can get health insurance. You have an affection for the human condition. The Republicans only want their people to get any kind of benefit at the expense of everybody else. And I know I'm generalizing, but what are you going to do? But what I don't want the right to do is to push the left to have to defend itself, because then you are pushing the left to have to defend the sanctity of a nation that we can create together. Like if given the opportunity for Black and brown and gay and straight and citizen and non-citizen to work together, like this country would be so beautiful. We would all just walk around just like hugging each other. There wouldn't be any corona. We would just be all happy. But they want to prevent that. And I don't want the left as a collective to become an army, because that's, and I don't want to stoke any paranoia, but there's going to be some stuff that's going to happen tomorrow. I don't want it to happen. And I wish that people would let cooler heads prevail, but we're fighting for the soul of this country. We're fighting to say a white nationalist doesn't belong in the White House. They need to be other places where we can round them up and segregate them and investigate them and eventually lock them all away and burn their Confederate flags. but it doesn't belong in the highest levels of the American government, which means it has an effect on the world. This was just a really horrible place for it. And I'm being diplomatic when I say that. And so don't push the left, because the other thing that needs to be noted is this. The right, the conservatives, always use Chicago or even Milwaukee as these examples of these Democrat run cities. And you have all this violence, and it's always the black people that are shooting each other, even though white folks do a bunch of killing too. Y'all just kill differently. Y'all do murder suicides. The wife says she's going to divorce you. You kill her, you kill the kids, you kill yourself. Or your sons and your daughters go into high schools and shoot up the schools. Or you have Kyle Rittenhouse, who's 17 years old and goes to defend a goddamn car dealership with an assault rifle. We all do, everybody's culture does a little bit of killing now. But they always use Chicago. And like people want to post information about Chicago, like, oh, look at all the murders in Chicago. Chicago is going to be fine. Chicago was going to do what's in its best interest, but they use Chicago to exhibit this bad behavior by African Americans, right? They do that. Oh, look at Chicago and all the murders and black on black crime. But I want people to take these words very, very seriously, what I'm about to say. What you call the black on black crime and the violence that you think is inherent in African Americans, those African Americans that will commit such heinous acts are the left political spectrum. Their guns are aimed the wrong way. They're aimed at each other. But if you give those people a reason to point their guns outward, who do you think they're going to fight for? And that's what I don't want to happen. Because we look at violence differently when it's inward, when it's inside of a community. But we don't think for a second, if those folks like the Crips and the Bloods came together in the 90s, called a bunch of truces, and you know who was really scared when that happened? The LA police. Because of the violence that we saw, and not just the Rodney King incident, there were many others, where Crips and Bloods and different gangs that had been killing each other said, no, we're going to go after the police now as a collective unit. The violence that we may see in central cities, because law enforcement doesn't exist like it does in suburban communities. Like suburban communities can call the police and the police will come and do the shooting on their behalf. That's really what it is. Sometimes there's street justice when you don't have the actual existence of justice. And we've been trying to show y'all that for I don't know how many years, but you don't listen, even though it's in our music, it's in our art, it's in our movies. You dance to our music and you go and see our movies, but you don't pick up the social justice messages that we have been covertly feeding you since forever. And sometimes it leads to outcomes that we wish would be different. But if we don't give people the opportunity to participate in a fair criminal justice system where a cop in Wauwatosa can be an assassin and murder 3 people and still draw a pension, that's a problem. But that's what Wauwatosa does. Wauwatosa can get a cops and have this cop just shoot people randomly or shoot whoever or shoot somebody that they think is a threat, because there are some general white people that live in that suburb that would also consider those same African-American men or a Hispanic man a threat. And so Joseph Mensah killing them is just an extension of what those white folks would do to live in Wauwatosa, but they don't have to get their hands dirty. They don't have to hire lawyers because you can just get a cop to do it. And so there is violence that exists in our communities, but it's way more complicated than anybody wants to believe. But if those folks who have plenty of guns, there's so many guns in the city of Milwaukee, there's so many guns, there's probably too many guns, there's more guns than people. But if those folks who care about life and care about the world and care about the future that may have guns pointed at one another begin to point them outward at the real enemy, we're going to have a problem. So all of those folks that they talk about in Chicago and the violent people in Milwaukee and all the African Americans, that's the left too. They're just preoccupied trying to create a semblance of justice in a community that people don't even really care about. Eileen Seeger says, blended is best. I can't disagree with you on that one. Douglas Dickerson says, the story of America is a lie. It is, but you can't tell people in this country, no, you can. But because who the truth is coming from, I think that's what's causing so much anger, because very few white people want to hear that they have been lied to and that their history was a myth, it was a fallacy. Like, they don't want to hear that from a black person, because the whole part of their history is to diminish the credibility of black people and black intelligence and black intellectualism. So when a black person tells you like, oh yeah, you've totally been lied to, they Santa Clausified your history, white people's like, oh, I don't want to hear that. But it's not that I'm blaming the people that have been lied to. You've been cheated on. America gave you a false promise. It gave me a false promise too. But once you take the red pill, and those of you that the red pill is, you got the red pill, you got the blue pill. The blue pill is you go on like everything is normal. And why can't we all just get along? And why are you always stirring the pot, Sherwin? No, that's blue pill talk. Blue pill talk. Oh, there's no racism anymore. That got done away with in the 60s. And I have black friends. I'm not racist. That's blue pill talk. Red pill talk is there's systemic racism in every facet of American life. It's in the healthcare system. It is with the number of deaths that one in 1,000 African Americans is going to die from COVID, plus the other stuff that we die from. It's the criminal justice system. It is diminishing the credibility of African Americans. It is disrespecting us at every turn. It is not giving us the same opportunities you give everybody else. But then you know how all of that works and how it's been embedded in policy. It's redlining. It's how you keep African Americans away from owning property so they don't have equity, so they can't be financially competitive, so they can't pay off their debts, so they can't start businesses, so they can't send their kids to school. It's all of that. That's red pill stuff. And when you take the red pill, you can't untake it. You have a lot more people, including some white folks and Latinos and Hispanics and Asian folks, that have taken the red pill, that see this country for what it is, not a fairy tale and a myth that makes some people feel more comfortable. It's not about being comfortable. It's about knowing where we screwed up as a country, because we're a young nation. We still have time to get it right. America has not been around like we know it for thousands of years. This whole democracy was an experiment. When the colonizers came here and tried to make a nation, they were like, oh, they knew that it was on the brink of failure. Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if we can keep it. Now the republic has been stretched thin. A republic if we can keep it. Now, once we all have the same information, then and only then can we move forward together as a democracy. Jay says those people that bring up the crime bill just want an excuse to vote for Trump. Most people's mindset evolves, especially after 20 years. I'm nervous because the ignorance is real out there. People want to blame somebody. And this is more of a complex topic that I'm going to get into today. But if I failed as if I made mistakes, right? If I screwed up a bunch of times and I just don't get it right, for whatever reason, I don't want to think that I'm a bad person. It's got to be somebody else's fault. It's not me. You got Donald Trump, and he's the king of this, not taking responsibility for his actions. He's like, no, I don't take responsibility for the spread of the coronavirus in the country in which I begged you to let me lead. Not taking responsibility. They want to blame somebody else. Well, the reason why black people are in jail is because of Joe Biden. That oversimplifies it. Somebody who speaks that blue pill stuff is ripe to be co-opted. Because you can't believe that African-American mayors in this country and community leaders at the time and the Congressional Black Caucus all wanted the 1994 crime bill. This also tells me that people are so incredibly ignorant about how their government works. The same government they love the government when you get a tax return. You get that earned income tax credit or that damn stimulus. Oh, you love the American government then, but you don't even know how it works. But that's also a part of the psychological programming of this country. We think that an old white man has so much power that Joe Biden had the power to single-handedly lock all these people up in 1994. Let me be clear about this. Tom Barrett voted for the 1994 crime bill. Bernie Sanders voted for the 1994 crime bill, but for some reason it was only Joe Biden's fault. One person out of 535 members of Congress, and it was Joe Biden that did it. That just tells us that we all don't have the same facts. And also, it's much easier to blame somebody else. It is, and maybe it is somebody else's fault, but not in every single case. There are some people that just screwed up miserably. They knew they shouldn't have stolen the car. They stole the car. Now they're going to jail. Now they got a criminal record. They stole the car. Now they have troubles. Now they're in trouble. They can't find a job. They stole the car. They're going to blame somebody else for stealing the car, even though nobody else stole the car. There's always going to be those people that want to blame somebody else. Here's what's crazy. Even bad people think that they're good people. And I'm gonna give you an example and I'm gonna get out of here. It's been a long time since we've been to a department store because I think everything now is Walmart or the grocery store. That's really all that exists. But I remember going to the mall. It was a place where we used to hang out because in my day, kids had freedom. And you go to the mall and you're in a department store. You guys remember Gimbals or Marshall Fields, Yonkers, or Prangies, or Sears? We used to have these department stores. And you go into the clothing section, maybe it's the men's clothing section, the junior misses clothing section, women's clothing section. And you have these very large pillars with mirrors on them. Just right in the middle of the store. You have your dressing rooms over here, and you got your racks of clothes and your different sections of clothes. And you just have these gigantic pillars with mirrors on them. And what we believe is that when you're in a department store or you're in a clothing store, those big mirrors that are just in the middle of they've got clothing racks all around these big pillars that are four-sided mirrors. Like, oh, so I can try this on and look at myself in these gigantic mirrors. No. That's not what they're for. You try clothes on in the dressing room. Like, very rarely does somebody just pick something off the rack and just put it on. You go in the dressing room to try on the clothes. But so why are these gigantic mirrors in the middle of the floor in these department stores with clothing racks all over the place? We have these huge mirrors. And everybody walks past the mirror and they look at themselves. They check themselves out. These gigantic mirrors. Scientists have found that people are less likely to steal, less likely to shoplift. Doesn't prevent it, but some people are less likely to do so because when people see a mirror and they see themselves, they deeply believe that they are a good person and they will feel guilty if they steal. That is why the mirrors are there. So even bad people subconsciously believe that they are good people. Now, it did not prevent shoplifting, but they were able to show evidence that if you put these mirrors up and somebody looks themselves in the face, they are less likely to steal. So even bad people sometimes think that they are good people. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me this morning. So I'm going to be providing information as I receive it about the upcoming election tomorrow. In the forum Facebook group, if you're not a member, and you can click join, but we're being real stringent about who we let in these days. And then tomorrow I'm going to provide extended election day coverage. We're going to have a number of people that are going to be out in the field in the city of Milwaukee, reporting back what they see and what they are witnessing as we head into the long-awaited 2020 presidential election. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day. Please stay safe, wear a mask, and the next time you see me, the polls will be open.